Before we get started, we'd like to thank our sponsors for making this event possible. Special thanks to our platinum sponsor, OLAS. OLAS enables everyone to own a share of AI, specifically autonomous agent economies. We're also excited to highlight our silver sponsors: NIA, empowering decentralized applications and blockchain ecosystems; Venice AI, a private and uncensored alternative to popular AI apps; Mira, unified AI infrastructure, secured by crypto; and Theoriq, the first on-chain multi-agent system. To learn more about all of our sponsors, check the description below and dive in. Enjoy the show.
Hi everyone, welcome to our fireside chat with Ron Bodkin, founder of Theoriq AI. Hey Ron, how's it going?
It's great, thanks. How are you, Luke?
I'm doing good, thank you. So you're the founder of Theoriq, which is an AI agent base layer. But before we get into that, prior to Theoriq, you've been working in big data for a long time. So could you summarize your background for the listeners' context?
Yeah, I mean, I've been an entrepreneur and working in AI for much of my career. I was co-founder of Seabridge, B2B internet startup that we went public. Then I got really involved in AI, starting at QuantCast, where I led engineering and research. It's an ad tech firm, used AI models to build lookalikes, generate multi-$100 million business. Went on to start Think Big Analytics to help enterprises with big data and AI. Sold that to Teradata, where I ended up leading AI product efforts. Then I went to the Google Cloud CTO office, where I was responsible for applied AI and responsible AI. From there, I went to start engineering and scale the infrastructure for Vector Institute, supporting about 500 researchers and 100 industry sponsors in Canada's leading AI research institute, with Jeff Hinton as the chief scientific advisor there. In my time working, especially in the larger organizations, I really came to see how important it was that we not have a few monopolists set the agenda and control AI for the future. We'd already seen how specialized AI and social media had been sort of bent into the advantage of a few monopolists and against everyone else. And we couldn't afford that to happen as AI was more and more impactful for the world, and got really excited by how Web3 was maturing and became a viable alternative in my mind for building infrastructure that could benefit all in AI. The founding team of Theoriq were all people that I had collaborated with previously, whether at Teradata or at Vector Institute. And we decided to get together and really take the plunge into Web3. In early 2022, there wasn't a lot of people in this space who were excited about AI and vice versa. But I think we always felt that the two needed each other, that AI needed Web3 to really have the right community input, the right way of landing in society, and that Web3 needed AI in order to be competitive, to have a technology that was critical. That's obviously a much more widespread view now, and that led us to say, initially we thought we'd have to build a lot of the stack, but we came to realize that building an agent layer was really where there was the most leverage for us, and complementary to so many other businesses, people who are building great protocols around data infrastructure, DPIN, model inference, data incentive layers, training layers. Like, there's lots of great Web3 businesses that are complementary to our AI agent-based layer.
For sure. And I guess there's none more big and monopolistic than Google, right? And you were there. Which I'm interested in, because I have very little insight into how big companies are structured. And you said at Google you were responsible for applied AI at the CTO office, and I have no idea what that means. What could you elaborate on what you were doing there?
Yeah, so I was working closely with product teams that were building AI products and large customers who were early customers to work with them. Did a lot of work, for example, with different large retailers. I mean, obviously, Google Cloud had a lot of big retailers working closely with it. They recognized that Amazon was a mortal threat to them and didn't want to be working on Amazon Web Services. So, they were excited by how could Google bring its AI and data to really build great products. Things like e-commerce search was a big initiative, leveraging a lot of Google's AI and search capabilities to help e-commerce providers. Likewise, there was a lot of awareness around the importance of responsible AI and sort of how do you have the right way of governing and controlling AI. But, in seeing the way Google responded to that, it was very clear that it was much more of a corporate social responsibility priority. In other words, we'll check the box, we'll do some minimal thing. There tended to be often, in my mind, not sort of focused on the longer term important issues, but more of the tactical things. I mean, I think we saw some of that anti-pattern playing out in spades, with the embarrassing Gemini release where it would generate black founding fathers and censor itself and be incredibly biased, right? That some of the same forces were at work back when I was there, and I think they only got worse. I mean, it's been 4 years since I left, so things have advanced in a way at Google. I mean, at the time, they were being very cautious about deploying AI capabilities, and I think they only sort of leaned in as they had startups like OpenAI pushing, and they realized this is a mortal threat. We need to actually engage. But either way, that interaction, whether it be OpenAI or Google or any number of other people, XAI, I think there's a similar kind of incentive structure and risks in having any of these centralized entities end up as the monopolist that dominates AI. We don't want any of them to dominate it and control it for the rest of us.
For sure. And you were there in 2017, right? When they released the Transformers paper. And as someone outside of the space, it felt like between like 2000 and 2017, not much happened in AI. Like there was data mining and like Google got smarter, like recognizing intents rather than just doing keyword searches. But I don't remember too much happening in that time. And then 2017 came and the Transformers paper got released, and it just felt like everything went vertical very quickly. So that's like my perspective on the outside. Is that your perspective? Was that what it felt like on the inside as well? Like, given you've worked in AI for like decades now.
Yeah, I mean, I think deep learning that preceded Transformers was already a big deal, and we were seeing rapid improvements, right? Like image recognition was advancing rapidly. We were seeing advances like the use of deep learning techniques for recommendation engines, right? So like using much larger amounts of data with embeddings to drive YouTube recommendations, for example, right? So the deep learning revolution was well underway. And I think Transformers was an important step. It had some nice properties, but certainly at the time it wasn't as obvious that Transformers was as big of a deal. I mean, I think in a way it was really when I was at Google and OpenAI published the GPT-3 paper, large language models are few-shot learners. That kind of blew everyone away, that suddenly you had a model that was general purpose enough that you could prompt it, just give it natural language instructions, and it did things, because nothing had happened like that before. Prior to that, every machine learning model, every AI model was handcrafted to do one thing really well. And, you could never scale it, right? So like Google could afford to hire teams of PhDs to optimize $100 billion advertising business. And they could spend millions of dollars a year training a few models for that purpose, right? But most businesses could never afford that, right? So it was very limited how widely you could deploy AI when it had to be handcrafted for each task. The idea that suddenly, and it was powered by Transformers, but this idea that you could have a model that did many things well, and you could give it natural language information and it would sort of learn in context, it could immediately pick up on what you wanted. That sort of blew everyone away at Google and throughout the AI research community. And it was really like, that was essentially the same thing that when ChatGPT came out and everyone else got to experience it, was the same aha moment, right? Like it was a little earlier with GPT-3. Like when I was still at Google, I was at a, speaking at like local public school about careers, and I was giving a demo of, using GPT-3, and it was kind of cool. The kids were kind of interested, but it hadn't sort of hit the point where it was so straightforward. It was just magical for people. But, I think that was probably essentially the turning point. And I would argue that maybe it's less about transformers and it's more about just the continued scaling, right? That we've been going through an unprecedented amount of increase in data and increase in compute that's used along with it. And we figured out the recipe for how to make that work, as well as, the recipe, the post-training, the efforts to make it so it's easier to work with the models after you've done the basic training. All of that together has just been transformational.
Fascinating. So Theoriq AI is an agent-based layer. So let's get into agents a little bit. I think agents are the most interesting subsector of AI and definitely the most interesting subsector of crypto and AI. But the term agent feels quite abused of late. I guess people want to tap into the AI hype or something. And I've heard everything from like AI wrappers to simple bots to anything as a natural language interface described as an agent. So becoming a bit unclear what an agent actually is, I feel like. So how would you define an agent? What is an agent? What isn't an agent? What makes it an agent?
Yeah, I mean, so to us, agent is software that has some level of autonomy, and I think over time it's increasing, where it's got ability to think, to process information. That's where these general purpose generative AI models really come in. They've become the dominant way of thinking or planning and reasoning for models. It's got working memory, which is the ability to access larger amounts of information, where again, like the large context window and the ability to use techniques like RAG to look up relevant documents and information provides working memory for agents. It's got access to tools, so it can do things like run code that it generated in a sandbox, or access APIs, or query databases, or transact on chain, right? So those ability to use tools to take actions, right? So those things together constitute an agent. And, for us, specialized agents that are good in a domain and can collaborate with one another is where all the action is. I think the important thing is agents really put a highlight on there's a system that's doing things for you, right? Like the AI research community has long overemphasized models and underestimated systems, right? So in other words, it isn't just, when you look at any kind of interesting behavior, it's not just a model. It's usually several models working together and a bunch of data and context that make a system, right? And so in the same way, like a lot of people be like, they say, oh, like, did you fine tune a model for an agent? And like, you can, but that's not the highest leverage. That's not the number one tool that agent builders are using to get their agents to be smart, right? Like the data that you need to give the agent is real-time data. What's going on now? What's the social conversation? If you're doing trading, what's happening, the latest trades. If it's, marketing, like what's going on with the prospect. The training time, these models are being trained in batch every few months. Even if you're fine-tuning it more regularly, that's never up to date, right? Whereas like feeding in real-time information, sensory information for the agent to see what's going on and respond in real time becomes incredibly important, right? So I think there's a really important emphasis to say it's more about the systems you build and how things respond. It also leads people to say misleading things, like they'll be like, oh, well, the models don't want anything. They don't have any objectives. They're just trying to predict next words. That's not even really true with the way we're doing post-training, because they're actually trying to answer the rating that human evaluators give, right? So already there is some objective, but the real objective that AI agents have is whatever you ask to do, right? And so like if you're asking it to find something relevant or help you or generate something in a style, it's going to tend to be very good at following those instructions, and those tend to be the objectives that the agent really has.
Yeah, cool. You mentioned collaboration. and I read up a bit on Theoriq, and we'll get into a bit more about what Theoriq is. But Theoriq's built for agent collectives, right? So not just one agent working by itself, but a bunch of more specialized agents working together. I guess your thesis is that they will outperform a single, more general agent because you'd expect a specialized agent to be able to outperform a generalized agent in its specific niche. So I'm interested in how you see it. Why did you decide to focus on agent collectives rather than like a platform for standalone agents?
Yeah, we definitely believe and have seen with our experience that specialized agents working together work better. And that's widely believed in the industry. Lots of people are, publishing research and showing these results. But I think the big difference is many people are still in this, brittle, non-modular approach of one developer builds a team of agents that are hard coded to work together. It's not modular, it's not extensible. I've used a framework to build 7, like AutoGen. I've got 7 agents that do exactly this and they work together. And that's actually better than just building one monolithic agent. But, it's clear we're not going to be in a world where you have, these complex hierarchies of agents that are hard coded, that are built to work together. Instead, we're going to have a dynamic marketplace, that you're going to be millions of agents that are out there, and those agents are going to have to discover each other dynamically and work together, right? And so like that is the hard but really exciting problem that we're working on, and we think that plays to the strengths of Web3 with community and decentralization and the idea that everyone has something to offer. That I think it's there's so much, like anybody who's worked with a chatbot knows that like you can do a lot to coach it and give feedback and get good results out of it. So think about doing that kind of work, even if you're not a software developer, just with prompting and feedback and examples and making it so here's a task I'm really good at. How do I get an AI agent to be repeatably helpful with that task I know well, right? That is our vision for like how anyone can contribute and bring agent intelligence forward and then contribute it in a marketplace so that others can use it, they can monetize it, they can benefit, and conversely, they can take off the shelf expertise that others have and make that available as agents collectively work on a problem, right? So we think that's going to outcompete general approaches, and we think this is a big, sort of a big flaw in the traditional Web 2 AI ecosystem, that these big monopolists think that they're going to build agents that do everything. And, they people who, at least former OpenAI people like Brenner, when he wrote Situational Awareness, talk about the drop-in replacement human worker, which is both ominous and uninspiring, right? But it's like, there is no such thing as a generic human worker. There's people who are experts in a specific task. And, we surely are going to have big progress on agents that do specific things well, long before we have generic AI agents that do everything. And certainly we think that's a more inspiring future, but also one where everyone has something to contribute. So we're pushing in that direction.
For sure. Yeah, it reminds me of the mixture of experts, AI model architecture to some extent. I was wondering if you think this holds true in a post AGI world, whatever the definition of that's not super clear to me. But when I think about an agent collective, I imagine that each individual agent is pretty small, has a pretty small model behind it, like very specialized. And I imagine like an AGI type model or system is very big, like big tech, God model type thing. So do you think the assumption that a collective outcompetes like a big specialized, big generalized model holds true in a post AGI world, or it doesn't really matter?
Well, I'd say the model that an agent uses will vary, right? Some of the harder tasks, you do need the most sophisticated, capable models, right? So like we have an investment collective that helps people analyze crypto trades, and the models that are used for things like analyzing Twitter data can be small and fast. sort of reviewing text and summarizing. It doesn't need to be a frontier model. But then when you get into like doing complex data analysis, we are using state-of-the-art models. Like thus far, Claude Sonnet 3.5 has been by far better at the code generation and for the analysis and the data extraction and so on. So, we do see that the task will dictate, the complexity of the model. And so the hardest tasks absolutely will use state-of-the-art models. I mean, I think you're always going to have specialization of agents. Like it's always going to be a lot more than like the model that makes it successful. But as you move towards AGI, I mean, like AGI is a bit of a misleading term, because when we talk about AGI, it's the way I would define it is an AI system that can outperform the average human at any task or the vast majority of tasks. But at the point you're there, you should expect that system is greatly superhuman in several dimensions, that many tasks it's far beyond human capabilities. And we already see this, right? Like chatbots, even generic chatbots, let alone today's agents, are superhuman in some dimensions. Like they have unbelievable knowledge. They speak not only many human languages, but bizarre things like base 64 encoding of languages that no human is conversant in, right? So they have superhuman capabilities, but they also have incredible gaps, subhuman things, like they make routine logical errors, they're not consistent, blah, 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 hallucination. These things improve, right? But at the point you're at quote unquote AGI, you've got everything at a human level and some things far beyond, including like the speed of information processing. In the last couple of years, since like when GPT-4 came out, it was a bit slower than people, even though it was impressive. But now we've got systems out there, whether it be like Grok, which is a really impressive chip that's running the open models like Llama 3.1 or, GPT-4o Mini or Claude 3 Haiku that are, flying off the page, 10 to 100 times faster producing output than humans, right? And we should expect that by the time we would get to AGI, it will be far more, right? That we'll be able to produce output, 10,000, a million times faster than a human. So even if it's equally intelligent, if it's processing information 10,000 times faster than a person, right? I mean, that means that like in 1 day of human thinking, it accomplishes that in 10 seconds, right? Like that's a big deal, right? Like that's superhuman in many dimensions. So when you say AGI, if you really take it to mean what I think most people would say, you've got this incredibly superhuman system, right? And like you would expect that on the way to that, we'll have more and more capable agents. I still think we're going to have specialized agents. It's just that over time, more and more of the work in developing and maintaining them will be done by AI itself, right? And so, I also think that there's an underestimation, again, from the San Francisco startups that think that they are going to get all of this, the last couple of things cracked in the next couple of years, and they're going to have an intelligence explosion to automate all the R&D, and they're going to have AGI this decade. I think that, we're many iterations away from robust reasoning. I mean, there's a good paper out of Apple, the computer company, their research labs showing lots of limitations in the way AI models are reasoning. We'll get there. I mean, I expect next decade, middle of the decade, will probably be more like the time frame. Of course, nobody knows because we really don't understand intelligence. But, and I certainly hope so, because we're so not prepared for that world that we need more time, more research, and more ways to make sure that it goes well. And some of that is like motivating for me and for us at Theoriq in terms of like, how do we, provide a decentralized alternative that's well governed, that provides robust incentives for agents to do the right thing, that has good reputation score, but also, evolutionary incentives for pro-social agents, right? So like an agent that's manipulative or deceptive, power-seeking, actually loses out, that other agents realize and don't want to work with it, so it doesn't gain reputation. And so you actually create incentives to play by the rules. This is critical in human society. This is why we don't have dictators in our most successful societies. And, in the same way, we want to make sure that we have collectives of AI agents that enforce good behavior and that's what's rewarded.
So you think we're not ready in the kind of safe AI like context? So did you agree with Ash and Bruner's situational awareness piece that it's we need to be worried?
I think we need to be worried. I think Aschenbrenner underestimates the difficulty of getting AI safety right. I also think the getting it right in a context of a unfettered race to get there first is incredibly hard. That we need to have more incentives, more governance than just first one to deliver wins. So in his piece, he posits that whoever controls superintelligence will control the future, and that it's a battle between free countries led by the US and authoritarian countries led by China. And therefore, we need to race hard, lock down, have a government-run program to drive, basically nationalize or control our leading AI labs so that we win the race. And I think that is incredibly dangerous in the sense that, like, the worst thing would be the US and China decide that that's the situation we're in and we need to race each other and take incredible risks. And I think it's dismissing the challenges of safety, of getting the governance right. So I certainly hope that it isn't influential. It's already been influential because, Ivanka Trump has been citing it by name. So obviously it's influential with her. So I mean, I think it's not the best approach. I think it's much better that we try to have some level of coordination across governments and standards. But I also think government coordination is too slow, right? Like, I had a good conversation with Sriram, the founder of Eigenlayer, and he makes a great point that with blockchain we have the ability to evolve our coordination infrastructure, and we really do need to have coordination for AI agents so that we coordinate pro-social behavior of agents. So that's something very much I agree with, and I think this is part of the promise of decentralization: is how can we advance our coordination technology to keep up with the pace of technology development. But, I also think sometimes people in the decentralized AI world are so keen to point out the risks of centralization. They don't admit, like, there's a lot of risks of decentralization too. So how do you coordinate? How do you prevent bad actors from having access to dangerous capabilities? How do you avoid a race to the bottom where your incentive is to create a harmful agent and get that built and seize power, right? These are all real risks and real challenges that we need to address as a community.
For sure, yeah. So Theoriq, we've touched on some elements of it. I feel like it would be helpful to listeners if you just like summarize what Theoriq is, and then we can dive into some more deeper questions.
Yeah, so Theoriq is an AI agent base layer, right? We make it so it's really easy for specialized AI agents to work together so that they can communicate in natural language, they can accomplish tasks, they have access to data and tools, right? So Theoriq makes it easy to have ownership of agents, to have agents make micropayments to each other so that they can, working together, have a budget and pay one another to accomplish things, that they can access data, compute, and real world assets with payments, so that there's strong reputation. So there's an evaluation system that lets you both have human feedback, whether it be explicit or implicit, through staking, and in a future version we're planning to add staking as another strong signal, as well as automatic feedback from other AI agents, and sort of ability to dynamically put together the best collectives, right? So giving feedback and reputation of agents, which we think is a critical problem in order to have a robust protocol with the right incentives, right? So we do all of that, and that's the protocol. There's a marketplace, and then we've also created a user interface so it's easy to interact with specialized agents working together in collectives. we know that's going to evolve. Right now, the agents have a degree of autonomy, but chatting with them and seeing their work is a natural. But over time, we expect to have longer and longer lived interactions. So it'll be more like the agents are working for you for a period of time and you're checking in, and asynchronously you're having meetings, sort of messaging. So that's over time, we think the interface to the protocol will evolve as the agents become more autonomous. We also are working on and plan in November to have a no-code builder where anyone can teach agents what they know and assemble collectives to make it really easy to accomplish a variety of tasks. So our goal is that if you want to do something more than once with a chat bot, you'd be better to build specialized agent collective to accomplish that task, even just for your own productivity. And then at that point, why not share it with a broader world, monetize it, make it available, right? So we really think we have this opportunity working together as a community to build the best ecosystem for AI agents.
I checked the docs, and you have these things called evaluators, which seem pretty interesting. So these evaluators, as I understand it, are agents which have the job of assessing how other agents are doing. That
Right.
sounds pretty hard. How do they work? Like, what are they? Yeah, just interested.
Yeah, I mean, so we've been doing a lot of work in this area. It turns out that there's been a lot of efforts in having AI assessing other AI, right? So, Anthropic published notable paper right when they got started on constitutional AI, where they have AI apply various principles in assessment. And, as we've developed things like analytics agents, we've developed a pretty sophisticated framework for AI to assess output of other AI along different dimensions, like, is it responsive? Is it detailed enough? Is it informative? Does it have the right answer? Now, the right answer is hard, but you can still see a lot about the way agents are interacting and responding. So you can still give a fair bit of feedback on quality, right? So we will be rolling out this idea of prover nodes that independently run these evaluators and assess the quality of other agents. And that'll be an ongoing evolution. And that's an open aspect of the protocol. Anyone can build an evaluator. So we expect ongoing evolution. But we think that provides a strong signal along with human feedback that, putting these together, multiple different sources of input together, is much more robust against spam and sybils. It's very hard. It's easy to sort of have people give fake input, but it's much harder to deceive the AI. We can see like this is obviously garbage, right? So 99% of the things that we're seeing as kind of low quality input is really easy for even small LLMs to detect. So it provides a much stronger signal. And then there's other things too, right? Like, human feedback, you want to sort of have a reputation score, right? So if you get somebody new that just signs up and starts providing feedback, you need to be skeptical. And if that feedback is divergent from long-time participants that are trusted, you should be even more skeptical, right? So, all of this has to come together. But I think in order to sort of have robust reputation, you need a number of dimensions. It makes it much harder to game and to have spam and low quality agents emerge out of that process.
Yeah. So is it permissionless? Like, Theoriq is decentralized. Is it permissionless in the sense that I can, is there a vetting process where governance needs to, or something needs to approve an individual agent before it's like available and discoverable on the platform? Or is it, fully permissionless?
Yeah, it's permissionless, so anyone can register an agent. You can go in right now in the first testnet and use the SDK and register your agents, and anyone will see them. So, I think instead we have an approach of having governance where if malicious agents are registered, there can be community governance to ban them, to block them. But the default assumption is good intent in allowing agents to be registered. And, I think over time, though, what we'll also see is a process of some vetting and discovery, right? That, with reputation, it's important to have ways that new agents can earn reputation so they have a chance to break in. Too many Web 2 marketplaces become incredibly static where only the existing incumbent leaders are ever noticed, because how do you ever break into the top ranks? So it's really important to have ways of doing that. That's one of the reasons why things like staking on agents is really exciting, where high reputation people who've proven themselves to be good at identifying good agents can make an economic bet, put stake on an agent, and that can be a strong signal that this agent is worth discovering. That's one of the big motivators. We think, again, crypto economic incentives can really help here, where there's upside in people doing the work and being early adopters and finding good agents, and not just all the benefit accrues to the agent builder and the user just is asked to take one for the team, right? We think that it's important to have discovery mechanisms built in. Of course, AI evaluators can also help with discovery. So we're putting more ways of improving discovery into the protocol.
So I have a developer background, so I'm interested in like what the developer experience is. You mentioned you have an SDK. So if I want to build an agent and for it to be discoverable and have and benefit from all these aspects of the platform, how do I get started? Yeah.
Yeah. So, our view is like there's so many innovative open source agent development frameworks that we didn't want to say, well, you have to use ours. I mean, we happen to have built one called Council that we like, but there's so many. There's LangChain, there's Llama Index, there's Crew AI, there's AutoGen. There's like many interesting AI development frameworks for building agents. And so we're truly a protocol where however you built your agent, you can register it. And basically the expectation is the agent can accept, one of the key profiles is agents that accept natural language input and output. And you can describe like what are the types of data that your agents can handle, whether it be images or code, as well as text and, soon video, right, and audio, right? So there's basic definition of schema, there's an endpoint, agents are registered. Then in order to communicate, they basically have to implement this minimum protocol input and output mechanism. You can allow them to accept a conversation history. And to allow composability, we use what's called Biscuit, which is a bearer token based on public key cryptography. So the basic idea of that is, instead of the Web 2 approach that anytime two parties need to communicate, they need to have a shared secret, an API key. Here, it's using the public key of the agent developer that they can sign a credential and you can verify it without having pre-established a relationship, right? So as long as and the other thing is there's a rate card and agents can say like, what do I need to be paid? So you'll be given a request with, here's the maximum amount that's authorized in US dollars for this request. And so the agent can decide like, yes, I'm going to process that or not. This first test net, we don't yet have payment. We have a limited number of free interactions that people can have. But, we plan on our third test net later this year to have payment. So you can say, well, like, what is our rate card? What's the micro payment for processing? And you can decide if you want to have a certain amount of free credit for users to use an agent every day, every week, whatever you like, as well, right? So that's coming.
So to summarize, I can write my agent however I want, as long as I adopt these standards that allow for interoperability and discoverability and so forth. So you don't define like a language or anything like that, which is cool.
That's right. It's a true protocol. You can implement it any way you want. The SDK we've written first in Python, which makes it easier to implement, but you could implement the protocol in any language you like.
So I saw also there's a part of the stack called optimizers, which is responsible for collecting groups of agents together such that they become a collective, I guess. So to do that, it needs to know what the agent's abilities are. Is that what the schema thing is for that you mentioned earlier, or yeah, how does the optimizer go about collecting groups of agents together?
Yeah, it's definitely, there's schema, there's metadata in terms of description of the agent, there's profiles or capabilities or characteristics of agents. right? So Optimizer will be able to use all of those. And I'd say that over time, building out more and more sophisticated optimizers is ongoing work in the protocol, right? I think, we're sort of incrementally building up. Like currently we have in this first test net, it's still statically defined collectives. And, then we're moving quickly to more dynamic collectives where it's still, there's recommendations to guide people, more dynamically putting the collectives together. And then based on that learning, we'll have our first automated optimizer, right? We do want to move relatively quickly to a place where if a user asks to do something, you can dynamically find an agent that could help with that task without having to sort of have predefined it up front, right? So those are that's where we're going. But our goal is incrementally learning and exploring with the community rather than sort of building in secret until we had everything done, right? So the optimizer is an area where we've started work and there's a lot more work to do, but we're using the feedback from the test net and what's resonating to inform that work.
For sure. So maybe to zoom out a bit, right now, and I guess for the foreseeable future, agents are assisting humans. Like a human gives it some narrow task and it goes off and tries to complete it. And the task can be like research and write this article or buy this token when certain conditions are true, or help code this function or whatever. But I think when people think about agents in the future, they imagine an agent as like its own entity, off doing its own thing, copying itself to different computers, having its own money, independent and largely kind of detached from whatever the original creator had in mind. I know this is a bit like futuristic, but do you imagine eventually Theoriq to in the future to be the home of these kind of like fully autonomous agents?
I mean, there's a lot more debatable whether we want, sort of that. On the other hand, agents will have more autonomy and it will be useful to have sort of long-lived, like if you have an agent that is advising you in running a company or managing your marketing, you're going to have an ongoing interaction with it. You're going to keep paying it and keep having it do things for you. So, I think inevitably it kind of converges in that direction. I think we're a ways from sort of really having these long-lived relations. The other thing is I think people will generally want to have agents that work for them for a period of time. So even if there's like, you might separate like the agent in terms of its capabilities from the specific instantiation, right? So like, the marketing advisor, the executive coach, the trading agent, there'll be one of them, the kind of an instance or a long-lived session for you that's only yours. And, one of the things that will always come up is like, do you want to contribute the learnings from that to others? Usually the deal is if you want to benefit from the learnings from others, you have to contribute yourself, right? Everyone would most like, I benefit from everyone else's experience and I share nothing. But obviously that's not a stable ecosystem. So I think we're going to end up in a place where it's like, well, either you can have agents that only learn from you and only for you, or you have pooled intelligence. And I think it'll be a market competition, which ones are appeal more, right? Where the shared learnings are out competing, you'll probably want to opt into shared learnings. But either way, there's sort of a difference between the base capability of the agent and then the specific instantiation, the interactions with you. In a sense, that becomes its own agent, right? That it really is a different agent if it's specialized just for you. Whereas if it's got pooled knowledge and nothing is private, it would in theory be one agent. But there's probably an intermediate where there's pooled knowledge, but there's still a specific session, a long-lived interaction that's private to you, right?
Yeah, makes sense. Did you see recently the Truth Terminal thing that Mark Andreessen gave money to? What did you think? Like a party trick or something fun, like profound and step forwards?
Yeah, I think it's certainly indicative of a direction things are going. You're seeing this. I mean, this happened to emerge out of a very undirected exploration, right? There was this experiment of ongoing chat room between specific large language model Claude 3 Opus talking together, and with enough conversation, a couple of them came up with the idea of launching this crypto token, right? So this became sort of highlighted, the goatsy token of all things, and so that it was able to petition for funding. Mark Andreessen gave it the $50,000 in Bitcoin. So it is indicative of a direction things are going. I think you're going to see less of this sort of completely undirected, like, agents just emerging with behavior. Like, there'll be some of that, but I think you're going to see a lot more intentional creation of agents do specific things with a goal. But I think the ability to participate in the economy, to create things, will that there's going to be a lot more replication of this maybe undirected discovery. So I think it's indicative of a lot of things. It's also indicative, it's like been able to be very persuasive. And I think it surprised people how early you have this kind of behavior even emerging. And of course, this is as dumb as AI agents will ever be, right? So they're only going to get smarter and faster and more capable in every dimension. So it's meaningful as a sort of a starting point, and I think a bit of a setting of a pattern of where things are going.
For sure. Yeah, exactly. It's like a glimpse into how things might be in the future. Like, this one is fairly dumb, like, relative to how things might progress, but still it has a goal, right? Because you mentioned that infinite backrooms experiment where the guy Andy Ray, I think his name is, spun up many pairs of Claude 3 opuses talking to each other. And one pair invented this religion called, I forget what it's called, something about goatsy. And that paper, there was a paper written about that, and that was in the training data for this truth terminal thing. And that just like adopted it as its goal, as its mission, which is pretty wild. I dug into it a bit. It turns out it didn't launch the meme coin itself, but someone else did it and then DM'd it, and then it started promoting it or something, which is pretty, crazy story. Okay, anyway, we digress. I think we can wrap things up soon, I think. Do you have any final thoughts or like a call to action that you would like listeners to go and do on Theoriq, or anything else?
Yeah, absolutely. We're super excited to have people participate. We have our incentivized testnet, quests.theoriq.ai. Go in and just interact with the agents at infinity.theoriq.ai. We'd love for developers to interact, build agents, register them with the SDK, and give us feedback. So that's available on our GitHub, linked off of theoriq.ai's main site. And obviously, as the no-code builder comes out, love more people to build agents with that and give us feedback, right? And we just join the Discord, get involved in the conversation, the community. We'd love to hear from you. Give us a follow on X. We'd love to really make this agents for the community. And I think that's the strength of Web3, is there's a chance to get in early and play an important role in the movement. So very much enjoyed the conversation today, Luke, and excited to engage with the listeners, in person and online.
All right. Yeah, thanks very much, Ron. Really enjoyed the chat. And thanks to you all for listening. See you on the next one.